Hi, my name is Steve Eady. I'm with the Sauk Valley Education Voters Forum. That'll be happening in a few weeks, and we've got all the candidates that we're interviewing beforehand. And with me today is Randy Hultgren, who is running for Congress in the 14th Congressional District as a Republican.
Right. Yes.
I want to welcome you.
Thanks, Steve.
Randy has gotten a list of questions like all of our candidates did in advance so they could review them, so we're not springing anything on them. And I'll just start right off, Randy,
Great.
And ask you the first question. What are your ideas on how to reduce spending in Washington?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is put a requirement out to our departments out there that they need to cut spending. It's that simple, that they need to find between 0.1% and 5% that they need to reduce off of their bottom line, off of their budget. And that's something I've been proposing down in Springfield as well. We see in our business community that you can find 5% of waste or fat or whatever if you have to. Right. You can put things off. You can say, you know what, we're not going to invest in new cars this year or whatever, or travel. And yet we're not holding our department heads, all of our federal line item budgets to that kind of scrutiny. So I really want to see us do that, see that cutting of spending needs to happen right away.
And the reason we ask that question, I guess I preface it a little bit because we have a $3 trillion
Right.
federal budget. You're running for federal office now. You're in a state budget.
That's right.
The state, of course, has got its own issues, but we'll stay with the Fed.
Great.
And a lot of people ask the question when I walk around and ask people. They keep saying, we just keep spending more and more and more and more. And is there anything we should be doing, like in terms of balanced budget, federal caps? One of the proposals that I think was on your list there was, do you believe in any idea of doing a balanced budget amendment or doing tying the budget to, say, GDP, because that way it caps spending rather
Right.
than just taxing more to spend more?
No, I'm open to those things. I definitely would look at them. I do want to see real accountability. And the problem is with some of the things that have been tried, there's ways that they just change the rules. We saw it with raising the debt ceiling just in the last week or two, where they'll just go out and change the rule. So a ceiling that was set with one vote that hardly gets noticed, $1.8 trillion of additional debt gets added on our backs. That's $11,000 for every single one of us. That happens just because on whim, Congress says, oh, you know what, the rule we set, the level we set, we can't abide by anymore. Let's raise it up. So what I think, again, what we really need is congressmen who are willing to step up and say, enough, we're spending too much. We've got to say no to this. We've got to have some accountability and responsibility back to our voters and realizing this isn't our money to spend. This is the people's money that they're sending to Washington, D.C. And I think that mindset of the more we can keep back in the district, if our congressman is fighting for us to keep more money in our own pockets rather than send it to Washington, D.C. with the promise that, hey, I'm going to work to bring back pork or earmarks or whatever. No, that's a horrible investment for anybody in our district to do that. What the best thing for them to do is keep money in their own pockets. You can decide what's best for you and your family. I can decide what's best for me and my family of how to spend money, not our congressman out in Washington, D.C. So I think it's got to get back to that. I'm open to other things if there's things that we can do to put real limits on it. But I think it comes back to real accountability of our directors of all of our different departments going back and saying, we need you to cut your spending this year and do it for the next 10 years. As we do that, along with really getting an economy that starts growing again, so if we can get off the backs of our businesses and have our job creators and say, we really want you to start growing your businesses again, creating jobs, we'll start seeing some natural revenue growth once again here in our nation, and that's what we need to see. But in the meantime, I want to see real cuts. I want to see congressmen who are committed to people keeping more of their money and Washington spending less of it.
Okay. On that subject, one of the things you mentioned pork or earmarks.
Right.
And one of the things that's difficult is, you have over 40% of the population now doesn't pay any income taxes.
Right.
So a lot of the times politicians will say, well, I'm going to bring the money back to my district.
Right.
How are you going to, appease those voters that don't pay any income taxes that want to see money come back into their community from the federal budget? What would you say to them?
Well, I'd say that I'm going to work hard for my district as far as I think there are real needs that the federal government has a responsibility to be a part of. What just frustrates me is when you have earmarks that become used as leverage to force people to vote for things that they shouldn't be. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit later on, of really misuse of these type of earmarks. So what I'm going to say is, I'll do my best to make sure that our infrastructure, our roads, our bridges are safe.
Right.
I went to school up in Minnesota and traveled over the bridge that collapsed a couple years ago. I know we've got bridges that are in much worse shape here in Illinois than that bridge up in Minnesota. So we need to make sure that we're doing what we can, but it can be done in the open. It shouldn't be as a leverage tool for leadership to force me to vote for something that I wouldn't otherwise vote for. So that's what I'm going to tell people is I'm going to fight for them. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that our infrastructure is safe and good, but I'm not going to do it at the expense of selling my soul or selling my conviction in order to bring something back. I won't do it. And I'm going to fight against these corrupt earmarks. And we saw both parties. I think Republicans have been as guilty or more guilty of abusing earmarks to force people to vote for things. And I won't do it. I'm not going to play that game. I want it to be out in the open. I'm more than willing to present what our needs are in the 14th Congressional District, argue for them, have it done in an open, fair way, and make sure that we have some resources for those things. But ultimately, the biggest goal is keep as much money in your own pocket as you possibly can. I think even people who aren't paying those taxes still see value in that because jobs will be created, their income will be going up.
Okay, very good. I'm going to turn a little bit to healthcare now.
Right.
I want to get your input on, the Senate already voted over Christmas, and
Right.
the Congress had voted quite a while ago. Now they got to come together and reach an agreement. But I would like to get your opinion on the positive aspects of our healthcare system today. What are some of the negative things that are in our healthcare system today? And as a congressman, what would you like to see happen?
Well, I think some positives very clearly are most people are pretty satisfied with their health care. We hear about 80% of people like the health care, like their doctor, like the opportunity that they have to get good care. We've got some of the best advancement in medicine here in our nation, more so than any other nation. We are able to get in and see a doctor quickly on very specific needs that might come up. So I think there's a lot of benefits that we have that we sometimes take for granted. There's certainly negatives. There's problems that have to be dealt with our healthcare, and I think a big one is healthcare costs. And unfortunately, all of the work in the House and the Senate really do nothing to deal with healthcare costs. Instead, what they do is they deal with a structure of trying to get government involved in being the provider of healthcare, either by forcing people to purchase things that maybe they wouldn't otherwise purchase, or dictating what type of plans are acceptable, when what we've seen over and over again is as the free market works and as we really go after what are the costs in healthcare, then there adds to more availability of it. So we've got wonderful things in our current system, I think much better than any place else, any other nation around us or over in Europe. I think our health care is much better than theirs is. So the idea of throwing all of that good away to go after something that I am so convinced government cannot do well. We look at how they run the Postal Service or how they run Amtrak and the failures that go on there daily, the money that's just thrown away. And to think that they would be in the position to provide health care is crazy. Even more closely related is you look at our veterans hospitals and how poorly our veterans are treated, and yet we want to have that same health care provided to every single American. I think is crazy. Putting a bureaucrat between me and my doctor is the wrong way to address the problems. We do have problems, and I think part of the problem is healthcare costs. I think part of the problem is there are a small segment of our population that can't receive healthcare coverage right now. What I'd like to do is go after that small percentage. If they're out of that, we need to understand it, that there's a group of people that could but choose not to get health coverage. Maybe they're right out of college, just gotten a job, and they'd rather spend some money on something else. But there are in those people a group of people who can't get coverage. But we can go after and address that by lowering the cost of healthcare. It's going to make it available to more people by addressing some areas that I think just make sense. We're going to open up possibility of more people having health care coverage. A couple things real quickly on that is tort reform. I've been the #1 supporter, Republican supporter in the House, was the chief Republican sponsor of medical malpractice reform to bring real tort reform to Illinois. We passed that through my committee. I was a Republican spokesperson on the Judiciary Committee, passed through a Democratic House, Democratic Senate, signed by a Democratic governor. I've just talked to doctors in the last couple of weeks that they're seeing a real reduction in their malpractice insurance because of the work that we've been doing. We should do that same thing on the national level, bring some real tort reform. What it does is People say, well, it doesn't have that big of an impact on the cost of health care. Well, it does, because it has, with out-of-control jury verdicts, there is a cost there. But also the idea of defensive medicine, where tests are done not because they're the right tests to be taken, but because a doctor is creating a paper trail if he's going to be sued to protect himself. That is a cost that we all pay. And so we need to go after that idea of defensive medicine. Real quickly, we also need to open up so there's more clarity in what real healthcare costs are. It doesn't make sense that the same aspirin in a hospital costs $5 for one person, $10 for another person, $50 for another person, just depending on who's paying for it. That doesn't make sense. So we've got to understand what the real costs of healthcare